The City of Albuquerque Public Art Urban Enhancement Division and Department of Arts and Culture proudly present Take Another Look. Built on the foundation of two city ordinances, Art in Municipal Places, and the Urban Enhancement Trust Fund, the Public Art Urban Enhancement Division provides funds to artists to create art for the public, as well as arts organizations for arts and cultural programming. Join us as we discuss everything related to funding artists in the public realm with host Joni Palmer.
Hello, I'm Joni Palmer, and welcome back to Take Another Look at Albuquerque's public art. Thank you for tuning in today for the second of 3 episodes about appreciation and appropriation in public arts in New Mexico. In this episode, I will be talking with artists Chris Martinez and Oliver Pope to discuss their artistic practices, their community works, and how they engage in this conversation, appreciation, appropriation, and we're going to throw a few more terms in there. So let me tell you a little bit about my guest today, and I'm going to start with Oliver, King Decorum PKA. Oliver Pope is a multidisciplinary artist whose work focuses on Black, queer identity, idiosyncrasies, and the interactive space. He is currently working at the New Mexico Black Leadership Council, and we'll be talking about that a little bit for those who don't know about this organization, focusing on their cultural vibrancy area of impact. The New Mexico Black Leadership Council is an organization that supports the expansion and implementation of public health approach designed to build long-term community resilience within historically excluded and marginalized communities by providing behavioral health resiliency, culturally responsive support services to children, youth, and their families. NMBLC creates art and events-based engagement opportunities to facilitate the dissemination of these resources to their constituents and communities. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Thanks for doing the work that you're doing.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, so Chris Martinez was born and raised in Albuquerque, New Mexico. As a child, Chris was obsessed with drawing, a passion that led him to earn a bachelor's in studio arts from the University of New Mexico. As an emerging artist, Chris most enjoys using his work to explore reality and the human condition. Curiosity is at the core of Chris's practice. He is compelled to ask difficult questions, to investigate, and to reflect. Through his work, Chris aims to foster that same curiosity in others. He creates art to study humanity, contribute to the visual world, and spark inquiry one piece at a time.
That's right.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And thanks for the great murals and community works that you're doing out there.
My pleasure. Thank you all for having me.
Yeah. All right. So a little bit of background. In the last episode, I spoke with city staff and arts administrators about how the City of Albuquerque and the Public Art Urban Enhancement Division are working to support and empower community members and artists when engaging in sometimes, often, maybe, difficult but necessary conversations and dialogue, specifically around the topic of cultural appreciation versus cultural appropriation. The terms awareness, vulnerability, and resilience guided that conversation. For today's conversation, I'd like to focus on the following terms: inspiration, intention, and respect. So I look forward to talking with both of you about how you're approaching these conversations as artists and as part of artist collectives and organizations. So let's start by talking about what you both do out there in the world. So Oliver, I'm going to start with talking about your day job.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So tell us about your role and the work that you do with the New Mexico Black Leadership Council.
Yeah, sure. So New Mexico Black Leadership Council, or NMBLC, as it's affectionately known, is all about creating long-term community resilience through creating a spectrum of care for communities of color. And so my work, I like to say I am the nebulous cloud of my org, because lots of different things pass through my hands into actual execution and creation in terms of how we engage the community and constituencies with which we work. And that looks like a lot of different things. It looks like our Bloom Fiesta, which is coming up in July, where we'll have carnival games for kids and face painting and tie-dyeing and all these activities, but also resources to help out the children's caregivers with school preparation, resources for reading, math, science, things like that. It also looks like helping with our Roots Summer Leadership Academy, also in July, which is a camp to help kids kind of engage in the world of STEAM, science, tech, English, art, math. So it looks like a lot of different things. It also looks like buying out a show at Vortex Theater so that we can gather the community for a play that focuses on how you rehab after you've been system impacted, incarcerated. So it's all kinds of different things. I'm in everybody's meetings. Nobody's really sure if they're going to pass a thing off to me or not at the job. But yeah, it's really rewarding work. It can be really dynamic work, but it's important. Yeah.
So my next question for you is, what are you currently working on at this organization? And I'm thinking about it in two parts in terms of the logo,
Yes.
and which is very much related to this set of episodes, and then also what you're doing in the international district.
Sure. Yeah. So I am lucky enough to have inherited / built up a relationship with the Public Art Office. We have been working on the International District Park Art Project. And through that project, we've helped host a series of workshops to help ideate whatever the art piece that will go into the ID's park, what it will look like, what it will be, which is super exciting. And then in terms of kind of this conversation, I don't want to veer too much off into who I am as a person yet, if you're going to ask me that, but I sort of found my way into this work and my work as an artist because I grew up in Richmond, Virginia. I watched the KKK march every summer down Monument Street. So things like that really sort of sear into your memory as a kid. And so as a queer Black person, you're sort of like faced with these sort of two roads. And if you continue down the lighter path, is what I will call it, you have to almost respond in kind to that energy. And so I found my way into eventually NMBLC, and we met with Noelle, Big A from the Public Art Office, via a conversation about our use on the outside of our building for a mural of the Zia symbol, Zia sun symbol. So our logo at NMBLC also currently features an inspiration from, direct inspiration from the Zia sun symbol. And so it's become a topic within our walls at our headquarters about why we use it, how we got there in terms of its use, appropriation in the first place, and then of course whether or not we're going to keep using it with permission and seek that permission, and so it's become a much bigger discussion, which is exciting.
And I love what's on your webpage, and I'm pointing to what I printed out from your webpage of an explanation of what the logo represents and some of the various other inspirations. And so I would encourage people to take a look at your website, because that's a really powerful, very powerful way to invite people into the conversation.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So now tell me a little bit about your work as an artist. What kind of work do you do?
That also is sort of a nebulous cloud, I would say. Multidisciplinary is a good way to describe it. I engage in a lot of photography work, video work, if I have the space available to me, I will try to install things, hang things from the ceiling, engage with the audience in some way, just to sort of create conversation around identity and create sort of interactive experiences where people can learn what the pressure feels like to be otherized in some way, and be sort of up close to that experience and leave hopefully my exhibition or my show or my work with some greater understanding about the power and the freedom and the dynamic sort of within that space.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the multidisciplinary is always, I mean, it means something different to everyone. So
That's
you'll
right.
just have to go look at his work. And I'll give you some information about that at the end of the episode.
Please, thank you.
Okay, so Chris, tell us a bit about how you got started as an artist and how you moved into doing public art.
Sure. First of all, Oliver, that's amazing. Thank you for all of your community work. That's just incredible.
Thank you.
How I got started, I mean, I think it's a story that many artists have, just kind of natural as a kid, and just loved art. Just it seemed like intrinsically. I just remember like when my mom would take me shopping, I would find my way to the magazine section and pick up a lowrider magazine, and I just loved all of the artwork in that. I just remember that kind of being a vivid early memory of art. From there, I think the next checkpoint was my high school art teacher, Peggy Trigg. She was just really amazing. She's still a practicing artist, just very talented, and she really nurtured my my love of art and pushed me kind of harder than I had been pushed before that. Yeah. So that was, I'm thankful for that. That led to studying art at UNM, and then finally professionally. So that's kind of where I started.
And what are you working on, like, right now? And I know you're working on a few different projects, so whatever you want to tell us a little bit about.
Totally. So I just wrapped up my first city-funded public mural. It's an asphalt mural, actually, so that was a new, unique challenge, and it's right there on 3rd and Central, so a very lively spot, and it was commissioned by Public Art as well as the DMD, so Department of Municipal Development. So very grateful for that opportunity, and it was great. So it's called Neon Legacy. It's the celebration of the centennial of Route 66. So it's kind of the kickoff to a lot of public art projects that will be coming down the line from Public Art. So very honored to kind of kick that off. So alongside that, I'm working with Mural Collective. Me and 4 other local artists have combined together to kind of support each other professionally and kind of pay it forward. When one of us gets some work, we'll kind of hire each other on to to teach each other, but to also help with making it feasible financially and learning from each other. It's been just really rewarding in a lot of ways, and these have become really close friends and colleagues in my life for sure. So Alchemy Walls, we're doing a group show at Gallery 1 just down the road here in the fall. So that's actually about collaboration itself. So our group's about collaboration. We kind of wanted to be a little meta and kind of drill down on that, and each of us is leading a individual project within the group show that will highlight a different aspect of collaboration and kind of its role, our role as an artist, how we collaborate, what that means as community members, what does it mean from the outside as a public member of the community, and all of those relationships. So I'm excited to see how that plays out.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to do a couple of shout outs for you because you say you're an emerging artist and you have some wonderful accolades. And one of the ones is something we've talked about in previous episodes, which is you are a recipient of the Urban Enhancement Trust Fund, Residency Award. What did you do for that project?
So that's kind of where I broke into public art really for the first time. So that was 2022. And I used that to develop a mural practice. I think it's just been really burning on my kind of desire list. And it just felt very kind of unapproachable. It just felt so big compared to drawing and painting on canvas. So
Right.
I essentially pitched that to the city as a way of like, that program is so awesome in that it's very open in nurturing artists in a way that they self-direct, which it really fueled me as an artist to break out into the professional realm. So all that to say is I used it to buy materials,
Right.
to find a wall, to have the time to do it. So those are the main points, and it really grew my network. I ended up working with some of the people we've had on the podcast. That's Noah Barnett. He's an amazing local muralist. He's very gracious and kind of taught me a few things early on. And then Andrew Fernside is actually part of my our mural collective, and I met him through that kind of thread. And so it's been an amazing journey, and it started kind of with that.
Yeah, and then you have several other things that you've done, since that in the mural arena. So, and you can see that list of some of his accolades on Chris's website.
Thank you.
All right. So let's dig in a little bit more, and I want to get into this notion of these, defining or in some way just talking about what these terms mean to you. So in the first episode of the series, we spent some time defining terms, and the first ones were really much more about appropriation and appreciation. Now we want to talk a little bit about inspiration, intention, and respect. And I've been talking with some of my artist friends in the community about this, and the artists I've talked with discuss the responsibilities. They talk about asking permission, conducting thorough research, engaging with and being open to participation and sharing and learning about other cultures. One muralist I spoke with recently said, within the context of inspiration, appreciation, and appropriation, and I'm paraphrasing wildly here, is our work involves power dynamics where dominant cultures may trivialize or exploit the traditions of marginalized groups. Awareness and vulnerability, those are some terms we talked about previously, are key to being able to do good work, meaning responsible and respectful work. So let's talk about these terms. And what does inspiration mean to you? How do you define it? How do you work with it? What about intention? And then also respect. And whoever wants to go first.
Sure. So I kind of, within the context of appropriation and appreciation, find inspiration to mean just the impulse to more deeply connect with whatever the item of someone else's culture is that kind of caught my attention. I would say appreciation or intention rather is that kind of next step, and it's kind of where the harder work begins, which is it's knowing that the thing that you're inspired by, does it fit into my practice? Why do I like it, right? Why am I choosing this item? That's where that kind of plays in. And then moving on to respect, it's really just balancing the admiration for the people of that culture or their culture with an intention to do no harm to them is kind of where I've landed on those terms and thinking about these things.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, I think that's pretty apt of a description. And I think you mentioned the word responsibility, which I think is kind of the key to all three of those terms. If you're being a responsible artist, a responsible human, you will engage in all three of those terms in a way that leads you to a healthy interaction with whatever it is you're inspired by and what you're intending and how you respect the culture that you're appreciating. And so I think to your point about our website, NMBLC's website's description of how we arrived at the logo that we did, I think there's sort of all of those elements there. And so it's a good start for us to sort of engage in a more in-depth way in terms of figuring out how to create a more respectful version of our logo. And so I would encourage people to go read it. But I think we're always trying to, as artists, find a balance between all of these different things, and particularly if we're creating a piece that is for the community at large, you know, it can bring in some a little bit higher risk choice making, and so that's always hard. And I think collaboration is maybe a word that we can add into those three that creates that sort of responsible approach to the art making process.
And you started to talk about what I wanted to ask you both next is, what does this look like, what you're talking about? What does it look like? What does it feel like? How is it manifest in terms of inspiration, intention, and respect? And you've kind of started talking about that.
Sure, I can take it. So I just want to kind of say that I felt pretty insular as an artist before very recently. I didn't really think too much about these topics, so for better or worse. And so that all really changed recently when I was working on a proposal for the Sunport, and that really turned into something where I had to confront it. So I'm grateful for it. Basically, I was giving my presentation to the stakeholders. One of them, Noel Biguet, as a matter of fact, challenged me on using native imagery. I did it use the imagery as a response to the prompt from Public Art and the Sunport, that they wanted to keep the traditional aesthetics of the Sunport in play for the project. And I thought I was doing it respectfully. I did some research online, but it really, the conversation with Noel made me really realize that I had some blind spots to address. So I think that's where the respect came in for me in a big way. I apologized as genuinely as I could on the spot, and then set up some time to learn more from her about it. And yeah, it definitely changed my viewpoint since then.
Right. And how about you?
Yeah, I think it's funny you brought up blind spots, just because in my over preparation, which is who I am as a person, I wrote that in my notes too, because I think there are sort of two things that happen. Is in that moment, let's say that you feel sort of caught off guard or called out. It's important to, and I think Noelle is a really good ally on this part, which is you don't make people immediately feel bad, because there's no context for why they perhaps appropriated, misappropriate, however you want to say it. And so you create a space around the conversation and the learning on both fronts that can happen. And it's one of the things that has sort of guided my work pretty heavily. When I was earning my art history degree, I remember very vividly being assigned this sort of research project. I think it was about maybe a Monet painting, something like that, early Monet. And the research document that I was assigned to use to do this project kept referring to the subject as a negress. And nobody in the class had a conversation about why that might potentially be like a weird assignment if none of the conversation is around that paper writer's bias against race and gender and things like that. So it became part of how I earned my art history degree, was calling attention to all of our blind spots, not just everybody else's, but like, how do we create that space where we're all comfortable being wrong? We're all comfortable calling each other out. Because the point is sort of, how do we grow from the conversation and educate each other in ways that maybe you're just not readily prepared from your own experience.
Right. And I think it is, you said you felt, it was kind of insular. And as soon as you start to have the conversations, you grow as a person, as an artist, and then you can reach out, create these collaborative opportunities like you've done. And that's you're right. We also need people like Noelle who are going to talk with us, and the rest of the public art staff is nothing. None of it is punitive.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about growth.
That's right.
And hopefully we can continue doing that in many, many areas.
Important.
So let's take this a little bit further. And we've kind of talked about kind of the challenge, but if you have something else you'd like to say about that is, the grappling and both of you have mentioned that grappling and that there's a process that you then are, and resolved isn't quite the right word,
Yeah.
but you've moved forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
And resolution is hardly ever fully happens.
Yeah.
It's about what it is that happens after. So any other challenges that you would like to share that, emerging artists who are listening might some advice?
I mean, we've definitely covered some important ones, and I think it's kind of what Oliver was talking about a bit, is that space to improve, right? Like that's tough work, and it's even if the most well-intentioned or nice people are involved, I think it's hard to be called out on something so weighty and important. So I think setting up kind of reminders in your life or your artistic practice to be critical, think critically about these things, right? I think that's good. Being willing to be uncomfortable, being willing to engage with people of marginalized communities that have that lived experience and that generational knowledge of the things that you might be taking from without thinking through it fully. So I've been in the last couple of months especially, I've been trying to install those reminders in my practice in moments that I think are relevant, and to me that's kind of been when inspiration strikes. Hopefully that's an alarm bell for me when I'm gathering reference imagery, obviously, when I'm using or when I'm considering place or location, audience, especially for public works, when I'm writing about the things that I'm producing or considering the concepts, doing research.
Yeah.
So those have been kind of the key ones.
How about you?
That's major. That it just occurs to me as you say that why the education piece is sort of important, because I think a lot of us think of like art school as like teaching you how to art, but it also is like
Right.
doing that research, like knowing to consider the audience, knowing how like that the place changes, the context of the piece, things like that, is super important. I think one of the things that also occurs to me is this engagement with the power dynamic of like a dominant culture versus not. And if you're not stopping to consider potentially how that power dynamic plays out in your work, it doesn't necessarily always mean that you're doing this terrible thing intentionally. But if the conversation doesn't occur to you, then it can cause harm. And I think it's important to always sort of consider and engage with that power dynamic. And really just that education piece. When Noelle came to our office, it was pretty powerful to see how myself and some of my coworkers who were in the meeting, how our immediate sort of visage changed once we were learning the history and learning just how sort of unaware we were of
Those blind
the
spots.
history.
Yeah,
Yes, and
yeah.
so grappling with that is always weird. But I think also as artists, that's part of our like gift a little bit, is to sort of live in that discomfort of the not knowing. Part of art creation is like the not knowing of what is gonna happen as you create. So just being willing to engage in that dynamic and be comfortable in the unknown.
Thanks both for that's great advice for any artists, whether you're emerging artists or you're moving into new territory. We only have a couple minutes left. I wish we had more time, but I want to end with one more question. And you've kind of brought this up a little bit, but is there anything the public art program can do to help support and empower artists in their work as part of this conversation? Are there any things that have come up? Both of you have had individual conversations with Noelle and some of the other staff. How might we take that forward?
Sure, I'll go.
Yeah.
I've been figuring out ways to ask people to be comfortable with being radical as well. So as we take on this conversation about what dominant culture means, what it actually looks like, we also can talk about what allyship actually sort of looks like in real time. If you are in the dominant culture, you probably have a seat at the decision tables. Essentially, what I consider it as, it doesn't always look like an enemy. It looks like your coworker, it looks like a boss, it looks like a process, it looks like a law of deciding who gets to also sit at the table. So does representation or participation in terms of allyship mean adjusting that thought process? Does it mean giving up a year of funding to anyone that is part of dominant culture? And so that way everyone else can have a year's worth of funding, a year's worth of exhibitions. Does it look that radical to be an ally? That's my kind of extreme 2 cents on it.
I love it.
Yeah, that's I like that because I'm very allergic to being radical, but I want to be. So I need people to invite me into that the fray, I think. So, and I think it's tough too because you mentioned dominant culture, and this whole conversation really got me thinking about how nuanced this all is, and most of our identities are not one thing. We're dualist, we're pluralist people. We all have different pieces of our identity, and I think I mentioned recently to one of my fellow artists that I feel like the oppressed and the oppressor. You know what I mean? Because I'm a man, that gives me benefits, but I'm also a person of color, and there's so many layers to it, and it's tough. But as far as public art is concerned, I'm still new to this conversation, so forgive me if this exists already, but maybe some an online resource of contact info for marginalized community leaders. Someone, if they exist, not to put too much of the burden on them, but those that are willing to converse about these topics, thought leaders on these topics, especially local ones, recommended reading or viewing list, something like that maybe.
Okay. Well, we'll take that into consideration for our newsletter.
Excellent.
And that gives me that kind of little prompt for me that you can find a lot of information on the website. So you just go to the city's website, type in public art and /podcast, and you will find the newsletter, and we'll have some of those resources on that page. And you can also sign up for our newsletter on that page. So. Thank you for joining me today. This is just the beginning of, I'm sure, many, many conversations that we will have, but also that I hope that happen out there.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Well, so if you want to learn about Chris, go to Chris Martinez Art, all lowercase.com. You'll learn a lot about Chris and see some of his work, but also a list of the cool stuff that you've done and the different awards you've gotten.
Thank you.
Congratulations as an emerging
Appreciate
artist.
it. Absolutely. Thank
It's
you.
amazing.
You can also follow Alchemy Walls on Instagram at alchemy_walls. They have an upcoming, as you mentioned, a gallery show. It opens August 28th. And
right.
again, it's called Echoes of Albuquerque, a Collective Dialogue.
That's right.
I look forward to attending that.
Thank you.
And you can follow Oliver on Instagram at King Decorum. So it's King, DIKORUM.
Nailed it.
All right, good. To learn more about NMBLC, you can visit them at nmblc.org.
Yep.
And you can email Oliver at oliver.p@nmblc.org.
Yes.
All right. Well, we have one more episode in this series, and so that will be coming out in June. I guess that's coming up fast. And the title of that episode is Moving Forward, the City and Sunport Initiatives. So we'll be talking about probably one of the projects that you were working on or are working on there. So we hope that after you've listened to this podcast that you will take another look at Albuquerque's public art. Thanks.
Thanks for listening. To learn more about the Albuquerque Public Art Program, the Public Art Collection, opportunities for artists, and so much more, visit cabq.gov/publicart. To learn more about the Urban Enhancement Trust Fund, visit cabq.gov/UETF. Tune in next time to take another look at the City of Albuquerque Public Art Urban Enhancement Division.